Good morning. This is Angela Coulter, Consciousness Transformation and Ascension Guide, and originator of a practice called Trinity Energy Progression. And I am here to bring you this week's Living the Shift podcast / live stream. So there are so many topics. It's so funny. I'm like, oh wow, I could do this like every day and still not get it all covered. But what has been coming up a lot lately has been around like what I guess, you can say true healing, so to speak, because we use the term healing so loosely. And yet the reality, when you start working in energy and looking at others' energy fields and our energy fields and stuff like that, is healing is when we're out of alignment. We're out of alignment with our natural divine self. Which usually means it has something to do with something in separation. It has some kind of fear, anxiety, anger, like all that kind of stuff. Now, those of us who work in I just want to turn off my ringer to make sure it doesn't go off. Those of us who work in, hey, Carmen, those of us who work in energy work start to see things differently in terms of, when I work with people, I talk about how everything in the physical, whether it is a physical ailment, a sickness, an illness, an environmental thing, meaning like relationships or jobs or your living situations or just what's going on, all have to do with what comes from the non-physical, right? And that's really, energy 101 and all that kind of stuff. And so I'm going to say that and sort of blow it off as, a really 101 kind of thing. But many are still not looking at that. And we get so caught up. So I can talk like for days and days, and I teach about this and I talk about it all the time on how to shift our perspective to looking at what is in the non-physical that's causing the physical to happen, right? And when we shift our perspective to say that we are, divine, perfect, infinite beings, and then we create this set of lessons in this form of separation embodiment, then we start looking at things a different way. Like, well, so what is this showing me? Everything's a message back to me that's coming from inside of me, right? So, so think about that. So this sounds really simple, right? So hang in here with me because I want to get to a really important topic that I see coming up a lot, but I wanted to go through these basics first. So if we recognize that everything physical comes from the non-physical, including our illnesses and injury, and all our relationships and what goes on in our lives, then the first place for us to look to find how to shift something is within ourselves. And it takes practice because we are so out of practice of doing this. What's really important to start looking at are things like, what are we putting our energy of creation to, right? That's what I want to talk about today. We give away so much of our power into somebody else's hands because we've had this whole big lesson of separation and this embodiment. We believe we're only, we're in lack and we're not in whole. And part of this whole process is coming to that realization that we're already whole and that all we have to do is recognize that, right? So, but what holds us back, because I talk to so many of us who are doing this professionally, doing energy work of some sort, spiritual, intuitive work, and we still get hung up on some things that are pretty rudimentary and elementary when you look at them, except they're such deeply embedded habits that we don't even see them we don't even see it within ourselves. So one of the most basic issues or challenges, habits that we have is giving away our power to other people when they come across as, I know it's better for you than you, right? And we've built an entire reality on this, an entire world on hierarchies and, who's more important and who knows better and experts and all kinds of stuff, right? And the more we put our trust in all of that, right? And I'm not saying that it's not trustworthy, but the thing is that we believe that to accept those mirrors of the part of us that is the embodiment of them, right? Of whatever everybody is embodied as an expert, we have to, at some level, give up a part of ourselves, give up our own power, right? So then we start looking. So what happens with the habit is we start looking outside of ourselves. This is a pretty advanced kind of topic. So follow me. But we start following, we start giving up our power in these ways because we believe, okay, well, for this person, for like, this person has to be an expert, then I can't be that expert. I don't have all that information. Well, maybe not at the conscious level, but you do have access to it. It's something that we can remember, right? But here's really the reality. I don't even want to talk about all that kind of stuff. The reality is, you know your journey, and you're the only one who knows your journey, because that is why you are embodied as you. Okay? So whether it's your journey, it's your body, it's your situation, it's your heart, it's your mind, your filters of understanding and realities that you have created for yourself. So first and foremost, you are the expert on you. You are the expert on you. You know everything at some level, down to the cells. We know exactly what we're here to do. We know exactly what part we are in the bigger picture, right? There was a while back, I know somebody who told me about this, and I can't quite remember what there was a religion, or I think it's a religion or a belief system or something at some point that they called, it was like the Church of Science or something like that. Not Scientology, but it was like something like that. But basically they would take out like the presentation of what we see in definition and just look at the cells. And when we start looking at cells, like say we just took out the definition that I am me, and then, say this desk is separate, and the chair and whatever, and we just looked at all the cells, you couldn't tell where one thing started and one thing ended. So we have all that interrelationship. And so we do have connection to that whole, right? We are part of the whole. But anyhow, so I'm going to start with this because, and where does this come from? We don't love ourselves. We don't believe ourselves worthy. We don't believe ourselves divine. We don't believe ourselves having all that information. And we believe that other people have more information than we do. We believe that other people are more gifted than we are. We believe that other people are smarter, are blank, fill in the blank. This happens a lot in terms of, and I'm going to say doctors, but I'm not even just talking about doctors. I'm talking about doctors, I'm talking about therapists, I'm talking about counselors and coaches of all kinds, including spiritual gurus, so to speak, right? And I like, even talking to some, like I've worked with so many people who said to me, oh, well, I don't see things like you do, or I can't see things like you do. I'm like, but you can, you just haven't remembered how to do that yet. Deborah says 100%. Yeah. And so what happens is this, we then disengage from our own knowledge. We disengage from looking inside of ourselves. And then we start to put all this weight and energy onto what other people say. And we start to adopt it into our belief system as what we believe, because for some reason we then get to that place where I'm like, well, I can't know all this stuff, right? They know more than I do. So they must know better for me than I do, right? That's what happens. So then what happens is somebody tells us, you have this illness and you'll have it for the rest of your life. And we say, oh, okay, well, so then you adopt it. Then what happens is you say, oh, okay, well, the doctor said it, so they must know better than I do. They must be right. And by the way, many, and I'm not just talking about doctors, like I said, all kinds of professionals that, focus in different areas. It's an egoic thing that we don't even recognize is done, right? Where the doctors, like, and have you ever tried to question, like, a lot of times you question a doctor, they're like, oh, well, I went to medical school. Like, how can you question me? And it's like, except I know my body. Like, I know what's going on in my body. And I see this coming up a lot more, and there's a lot more in consciousness about this, because we have sort of this bipolarity going on where you have people who are so very, very conscious about it, and then others who are just like almost at the other extreme of, no, what everybody else tells me must be the truth. And those are the ones that are having like mental breakdowns and physical breakdowns and everything else, because you then try to align your belief system to what the other person tells you, and you're ignoring the core underlying issue that's causing it to begin with. Okay, so when we start working from things at a higher consciousness, we start to throw out what other people are telling us and look inside. Okay. Why would I create that in my reality? Like, what is that there to show me? What is that there to teach me? Also, so there's a whole feel on that, right? And I can just, months and months and months talk about that. But also, when we then start saying things like, I have this, right? I have diabetes, I have MS, I have this. Instead of, I have been diagnosed with this, it's a very big difference in energy. Because when you say, I am this, you're pulling that in and making that you as your identity, right? I have worked with a whole scope of people from who are just on the one end of completely giving away their power to another end of saying, And actually, a lot of the people who get to me are the ones who are saying, because the doctors have told them one thing and they're like, So there was like one woman that I worked with who, when she first came to me, she had no voice, like literally no voice. I was sitting 2 feet away from her and I had to lean forward to hear her because she spoke in a whisper, right? She had several bouts with cancer. And she had several bouts with cancer, and they had taken some stuff out of her lungs, and in the process had paralyzed her vocal cords. And the doctors told her, yeah, you're never going to speak more in a whisper ever again. And she was like, yeah, screw you. I'm going to talk normally, right? And she's like, I just have to find out how to do this. So something that she was listening to within herself was saying, yeah, no, I can change this, right? So then she found her way to me, and I worked with her over a period of months. And in like 6 months, she was speaking a whole lot more clearly, still a little soft, but like a year later, and I was teaching her how to work on herself and look within herself. And we did a whole bunch of energy work on shifting stuff and accepting things and forgiving and all kinds of things like that. Finding her voice, allowing herself to project her voice. That was what she was holding, was that she didn't believe she was worthy to do so. So as we shifted all these things and healed them, resolved them, really is what I call them, resolved and completed them, her voice started to come back. And so she had said to me at some point, she goes, now I said I would never go back to that doctor again who told me I'd never speak. But now actually, I think I'm just going to go back just so he can hear me talk. So I could just rub in his face because he was so obnoxious about it. And I said, well, yeah, okay, that's ego, but okay. But, it was a great point. And then the funny thing was, then she went on and has done her own stuff, and she's still working on resolving things, whatever. And I didn't hear from her for, I don't know, like maybe 2 years. And then she called me up out of the blue, and I didn't even recognize her voice because it was a normal street voice. I was like, oh my God, like you're loud. I have to turn my phone down. Wow, that's crazy. And that was a situation where the doctors had said, yeah, it'll never change. There's another person that I've worked with who has a kind of cancer, who has had a kind of cancer that typically kills somebody within 18 months. Typically, the doctors have been completely baffled because he chose to not listen to that. He chose to not accept that as his belief system. He chose to not give it energy, right? And we're going to talk about that in a second. And so he got this kind of cancer, and it was, I think, if I can remember, 15 years ago, somewhere around there, somewhere around 15 years ago, a cancer that usually kills somebody within 18 months, right? He went into remission, and it's come back, and every time it's come back at a smaller piece, right? Like a more an easier way to deal with it. So now the doctors have had to shift, that he's worked with, have had to shift into a place of, oh, okay, well, now we're just going to treat it as we are going to treat it as a chronic illness. And when he came to me, he said, so got it as the chronic illness thing. Now I'm ready to get rid of it altogether. Because he knows he already licked it from what they told him before, and he's going to go all the way, right? Because he can. So one of the biggest things that holds us back from healing is our beliefs that somebody else can tell us what we can or cannot do. And it sounds really simple to say it, but these are really deeply embedded habits. And I'm not saying that doctors are terrible. I'm not saying that counselors or whatever are terrible. I always tell anyone the step for us to add in is to two steps. Number one is start tuning into yourself. That's the purpose of meditation. That's the purpose of inner work. And really it becomes part of your complete consciousness, to a point where you then can add this extra layer in every conversation, every interaction, to say, okay, is this my truth? Is this true for me? And what is it out of this interaction for me to take? Sometimes it is to motivate us to change our direction completely, right? However, it is so much more of a complete resolution when we allow ourselves to say, I have been diagnosed with this, I have had this, but I can change it now, right? And sometimes we don't. Sometimes we choose to, and I've worked with people who have had terminal illness, who have gone ahead and completed their life and transitioned. And I always say, in working with them and working with anyone, in energy healing and stuff, this is another discussion for another day too, but like, I don't look at death as a bad thing, right? A death in many respects is a graduation, saying, oh, you learned all the lessons you set out to learn, it's time to move on. Whether you're 5 minutes old, 5 weeks old, or, 100 years old. However, we still have a lot of fear about death, a lot of stigmas around death and whatever. So we think that a success is like not dying. And so what I tell those who I've worked with, who are, a lot of times down the path of what we call a terminal illness, I ask them, how does it serve you? Because it always serves them in some way, right? And then also, can you change what's the underlying cause that caused you to manifest this? Will you manifest? Are you willing to? And do you believe that you can, right? Because sometimes the use for it is so deeply embedded that they're not going to change it. But the key is to resolve all the stuff around it that caused them to manifest in the first place, so that they don't have to come back again and do the same lesson again in a more intense manner. So, and that they can, when they do go, that they can go in peace and acceptance. Okay. But the thing is this, I'm going to go back to the energy that we give to what other people say, to what other people do. Look at our society, especially here in the United States. We put in so much energy to we need single payer healthcare, there's so much single payer healthcare. We need this, we need, healthcare for all and all this kind of stuff. And that's not absolutely right. We should all have a basic quality of life. However, we're still looking at things though in this way of, because I'm going to get sick and I'm going to need medicines and I'm going to need to go to the doctor and I'm going to need. When we say I'm going to need or I need, that puts us in lack, right? So we put a whole bunch of energy into all that, and it's fear-based, by the way, right? I'm afraid that I'm going to have to, get sick and I'm going to need all this medicine and all that kind of stuff. So what if we shifted? So think about collectively and the battle between no, and it's, it's up to the individual, and in this, all this kind of stuff. And yet we have this entire culture of we have so many layers. It's just so many layers. We have an entire culture of, the pharmaceutical world owning the medical world, the Western medical world, right? We have so many politics and money having nothing to do with people's well-being and centered and wholeness, right? Playing on lack and fear and anxiety and all that kind of stuff, right? Look at all the commercials and look at all just even what we talk about publicly. And so we put all this energy to it. We put all this energy into the battles and that's really, okay, so that's important. But what are we looking at? What we're giving energy to, right? We're giving energy collectively to the fact that we will continue to be sick. We're collectively giving energy to that I'm going to need to go to the doctor, that I'm going to need these incredibly expensive medications and feed the pockets of those who are creating them, right? So think of all that energy. So if we took that energy and instead of putting that energy out there, turned it inside of us and said, okay, what can I do to align myself in this way so that I am perfectly smooth and running and flowing and integrated as wholeness in ease and happiness and bliss, right? This sounds like it has nothing to do with that, but it does. Because if we took all that energy and instead focused on our own centeredness, peace, resolution, flow, and love, the more we do that, the less we have in separation of anxiety, anger, guilt, sorrow, doubt, pain, all that kind of stuff, which is what, when it's held in our physical body, causes illness and injury. And so when we go back to like all the way back to the beginning, and it sounds so oversimplified that so many just like, well, oh yeah, okay, yeah, it's all about love, ha ha ha, like, yeah, hippie. As I could say that with, you know, my tie-dye on today. But but the key is, you know, love is our natural state as part of the whole, right? We learn as we are embodied to be separate from that, and you know, to more and more, like as we come in and go into our lessons, we create more separation, and then our mind, the ego and the mind, take over and then worry and create anxiety and fear, and because it's all from lack, right? But when we accept that wholeness within ourselves, there's nothing to lack. When we get to that place of I am whole and I am truly unconditional love, and I am accepting, and I see the bigger picture, there is no reason for me to project anger, to hold anger or fear or anything to anybody else, and most importantly, myself. And when I stop doing that, I stop building up toxins in my body. I stop treating my body as if it's my enemy and start treating it as it's worthy of something to truly love and embrace. And then the diseases, they don't exist anymore. Diseases go away, illnesses go away, injuries heal, right? And so that's the real basic thing. And yeah, so I can explain that really easily, but it takes us so many so many layers to unravel that we have of habits of lack, right? So when we say, oh yeah, well, the doctor said I'm going to have to take this medicine for the rest of my life, do you want to believe that or not? Or would you rather commit yourself to shifting within? So it's funny because I posted about this on one of my private groups this week. There's a woman who I am Facebook friends with, and I don't know her personally, but we're in the same like spiritual circles. And she posted this amazing, and I can't even remember her name, which is interesting. I went back to find it later because I was going to share it, and then I couldn't find it again. But she posted this amazing post about her experience with breast cancer. And she is committed to higher consciousness living. She does this, you know, for a living and all this kind of stuff. And she talked about how when she was diagnosed with breast cancer, the doctors wanted to do a mastectomy right away. And she said, no. So she dedicated herself to herself. And I'm guessing that part of her lesson was to do that, to fully immerse herself in the dedication of the nourishment and love to herself. So she meditated more. She did energy work on herself. She went to go get energy work and stuff with others as well when she was so guided. She, you know, started eating more organic and natural, and then took some herbal supplements and all this kind of stuff. But so she followed her own guidance over an extended period of time. Went back a period of time later, because the doctors had said, oh, well, no, you know, if you don't get the mastectomy, it's going to metastasize really quickly and all that kind of stuff. So she went back. She didn't say how long it was when she went back. It was a period of time later. And though the tumor hadn't shrunk, it had not grown either. And at that point, she said, okay, I will get a lumpectomy, but not a mastectomy. The lumpectomy was just to pull it out, right? To pull out the tumor. So that's what happened. So instead of having this full mastectomy, she just had to have the lumpectomy, which is a much more mild kind of operation and treatment. And then she could move forward, and she has maintained this more nurturing kind of lifestyle. And I thought, what a great example, because people say cancer, the doctor says cancer, and we freak out. cancer is already in our bodies. Okay, we have cancer cells, or cells that they attract toxins within our body. And what are toxins? Toxins are things we do that don't align with our natural order, like in the optimal state for our body. So that can be external things like bad food, foods, not bad foods. There's no bad or good. It's just like foods that are like very chemical based and not in alignment with the natural flow of interrelation, right? Which is a lot of the food today. But also anger and sorrow and anxiety and loathing. A lot of times it's self-loathing that we hold inside and we don't resolve. When we hold it inside, it then creates all these toxins that we build up in our system. And then these cells that are cancer cells, so to speak, attract the toxins, because part of their job is to expel them from the body, right? Except when we have so many toxins that we hold in our bodies, then the body can't expel them. So that's when tumors grow and mutations happen and all that kind of stuff. So in reality, when we look at things from an energy healing standpoint, cancer is really a chronic illness. It's something that has happened over a long period of time because it's somebody who has just accumulated more and more toxins within their body for whatever purpose, right? Again, to go back to the basic reason to resolve all these things that we hold in us, to align our bodies, our minds, and our spirits in this place of unconditional love and nourishment, and knowing that we're worthy and divine. And in doing so, all we do is to align with that, right? And to also understand that we can actually still have a great experience without all the trauma, drama, and illness and stuff, okay? And people will laugh when I say that, but we're addicted to that too, because of all the separation, all the experience. And we have a lot of addictions to these things, thinking, oh, well, it's not going to be worth it. How many times have you seen, oh, the journey is not worth it unless we, have to work hard, or it has to be hard, or we have to, like push through it, or, the epic journey. But we can also, good morning, Gloria. But we can also have this amazing, loving, blissful journey. And the more that all of us commit to that within ourselves, and there's a lot of layers. This is a constant thing. It's something for us to incorporate into our entire existence, like not just something we do on Sunday or once a week or whatever, and not something we just do, every morning in meditation. It's something we do, yes, every day, and we start incorporating it to everything. We start looking at what the bigger picture is. We start stepping back and saying, okay, what is that reflecting back to me? Why am I angry? What am I holding on to? And it's for us to take the self-responsibility of what our reality is. So when we do that, we can change. When we realize that when you realize that you have full responsibility for your own reality, right? Then you realize you can change it. Hi, Kevin. Good to see you on here. When we realize we're, in that full reality of full responsibility within our reality, that we know we can change it. And when we know we can change it, that gives us all the power. It allows us to, not just give us, but allows us to take our power. And then we make these decisions that will really support and nourish that resolution and completion of whatever it is that's out of resonance, or is in dissonance and in friction in our lives, whether it's illness, injury, stress, trauma of some sort, issues in our lives and stuff like that. And that's how we work from it from an energetic standpoint. We're still like remembering how to do this, okay? Because we have done it in so many levels, in so many ways without that and in lack. And we still are trying to, in many cases, sometimes we take energy work and we try to like apply it in the same way like that Western medicine, or external medicine, I call it, like tries to try, like how we've been in the habit of working with that external medicine and saying, well, okay, I'm in pain. I just need to do energy work on the pain and that'll go away, which you can do. Absolutely. But it's just a Band-Aid. You can do that, but also the commitment is to look inside and say, well, why am I manifesting this? And what am I holding in my body that's causing me to have this pain? Because even things like arthritis and allergies and all that kind of stuff. And I've worked with people, including myself, to change those things that others say or culture says or doctors say are, something you always have. It's not the case. I've seen it happen so many times. People just let it go when something is resolved within them and they find the key underneath. That's what this is all about. So the home play for this week is for you to listen to your words and listen to your thoughts. Be observant to what you're thinking about the things that are going on in your body or in your life. Are you telling yourself, like, I am diabetic, I am old, right? There's another one. I am old is one of the biggest limiting beliefs that we can have, because culture tells us, like, oh, you're supposed to get old, you're supposed to get decrepit and age and all that kind of stuff. And yet they're looking at ourselves, scientists look at ourselves now and they're like, well, we actually have the ability to be completely, regenerative indefinitely, but it's what we choose. And so, and essentially it's what we choose to do that shuts us down. So, if we go back to, does this align with me as a whole, right? And it's not that we can't use anything outside of, it's that it's time for us to become dependent on what's inside. And part of the steps are first asking, is this for me, right? Is it for me to do this? Is it for me to have this operation? And sometimes you get the answer yes, when you can trust that guidance and it's not from fear, but truly from a space of knowing, right? We can say, do this, like do this. I had this weird thing that happened like a month ago. And it was so out of like left field. I hadn't, it was just bizarre. And I was like, okay. And right away, I'm like, well, I've made this pact with myself that I don't need to manifest things in my physical body anymore. So I don't need to get sick or whatever to get a message. So if I get something in my body, then I know that I have been ignoring something really blatantly, right? So something a little, and it was relatively little, but it was really annoying. And so I'm like, what the heck is this about? And da, da, da. And so I was working on that. And as I was looking at that within myself and listened to the possibilities of why I was creating that, it was something that I held on in myself from like lifetimes, right? And I finally resolved that with gratitude and for thanks for for having the lesson and all that kind of stuff. And I just stayed with the focus on to have conscious clarity of what to do so that I can shift this, right? And I literally got the answer, and it was like totally something I would have never thought of, and it was resolved within 24 hours after I listened to that. We do have the answers, and it wasn't me looking on Google, it wasn't me going to the doctor, it wasn't me, like looking up all these things. It was literally looking inside. So look at that this week. I want you to look at what you're saying and what you're thinking and how you're creating and continuously creating within your life the things that you've accepted that other people have told you that you can or cannot do, that you have to have this for the rest of your life, that you have this and it'll never change, right? Or even just things that and other things like I'm old, or I can't do this anymore because I'm old, or I hear this kind of stuff all the time. You can do whatever you want, whenever you want. It's just a matter of if you allow yourself to align with it in that wholeness. So baby steps. First is the awareness. So pay attention to that this week. And then we'll see you next week. So thanks for joining me. This is Angela Coulter signing off with this week's Living the Shift. Have a good one.